seems to me like they want us to be afraid, man. Or maybe we just like being afraid. Maybe we just so used to it at this point that it's just a part of us, part of our culture. Security alert on orange. It's been on orange since '01, G. I mean, what's up, man? Can a brother get yellow, man? Just for like 2 months or something? Goddamn.
Okay. You guys know I'm a huge music fan, and whenever I write, I have something going on in the background. This album by Thievery Corporation is bloody brilliant, and it so fits in with the vibe of what's going on around us now, and what I'm actually writing about. So, as you know, I'm writing this sci-fi thriller / whatever you want to make of it. But I've also written many other things. I'm just going to give myself a quick plug because times are a bit hard. So, I wrote this psychedelic novel, as you can see by the colours, under my pseudonym Saffron Melocastro. Actually, this edition was signed by, you can see, Sacha Baron Cohen, aka Borat Bruno, Ali G. I'm a big fan. And I was featured in lots of local press. Yeah, that's me. This is me with a British celebrity. And over the years, I've written tons of things for the local press. This was all written by me. As you can see, I'm actually a messy bugger. I'm so glad you can't see the state of my desk and my room. And an interesting article, fuelless engine. Yeah, take note, fuelless engine. I wonder why that didn't get out there, guys. 2008 as well. What happened in 2008? But the gentleman that I interviewed who invented this, a Venezuelan engineer, he actually was an apprentice for NASA under Werner von Braun. Some of you may know who I'm talking about. Famous Nazi engineer, or aeronautical engineer, whatever the correct technical term is for what he was. But he was a Nazi, basically. And yeah, in the States. And today's extract from my novel is actually going to mention Operation Paperclip, and you will know more in a moment. Do remember, guys, that my upcoming novel, is still in its embryonic stages, so I will be editing and making changes as I go along. But the parts that I'm reading out today, there is quite a specific reason for that, because of things that are going on globally right now, so I kind of want to get it out there. I'm in a bit of a rush, I don't know why, but something's pushing me to do this. So, let us start. Carrying on from the last stage. So, Sky, now it's your turn. There's some things Effie and me don't get, like that CERN place you mentioned, and some other stuff. Okay, let's start with CERN. Translated from the French. In English, it stands for the European Council or Organisation for Nuclear Research, based in Switzerland near Geneva. I'm not exactly an expert, so my knowledge is a bit limited. I can give you a brief explanation of the official version to the public, which is pretty incredible in itself. But then it gets really weird, and you will understand why Xanthias specifically mentioned it. Basically, it's an international centre for scientific research run by 23 European states. They say they are pushing the boundaries or frontiers of science and technology to uncover what the universe is made of. It was founded in the 50s, not long after the Second World War. They've got a few thousand employees, so it's not exactly a small venture. In fact, it's very important. They have got some of the world's most powerful particle accelerators, one in particular, the Large Hadron Collider, which is the most powerful in the world, situated in a tunnel 27k long. Do you remember hearing about the God particle? Anyway, using the LHC, they simulate the conditions of a so-called Big Bang a fraction of a second after it took place. Yes, that wondrous event that apparently formed the universe. I shook my head in wonder and disbelief. 2 blank stares from my audience. I continued nonetheless. And something else really interesting is the World Wide Web was invented there in 1989 by a British scientist. In the beginning, it was developed to share information between scientists and universities and research institutes around the world, but in the early 90s they released the software into the public domain. The two of them were nodding and feigning interest, but I could see I was losing them. Okay guys, I told you I'm the last person on the planet to try and explain anything remotely scientific. So basically you understand it's a really important international research facility. So let's move on to the weird, which is the one thing we're all waiting for. So I've told you the basics regarding the official story of what they do at CERN and what the LHC is for. The other story is very different. How about it being made to open a doorway, a portal into another universe? How about the possibility that CERN is actually a research facility into everything outside our planet, extraterrestrial beings and their aircraft UFOs, just for a start? Remember, it is international governments who finance this. It's not a private facility. Apparently back in the 80s, a group of scientists at CERN presented this theory about opening a doorway into another realm, which could then be closed, opened, then shut, just to prove the theory. It seems like the head of these various scientific departments were known as the family. Some were not in agreement and were actually very concerned at the consequences. However, they went ahead and made the presentation and were subsequently given the go-ahead by governments, as well as many millions in funding. I believe that they were threatened with extermination if they spoke out publicly about the experiment. I paused for a moment and took a sip of water. Now I had their attention. Wow, this is cool and scary. Carry on, Mum. It wasn't often I saw my own daughter that interested in something, so I had to continue eagerly and retain her attention. You may be asking why they would throw not only millions but billions in funding at such a venture. Well, imagine what they may find. The most powerful weapons literally in the universe, unimaginable powers and technology that would usually take centuries or even millennia for humans to create. The potential to travel faster than the speed of light, harnessing all this power and keeping it only for select nations. I just have to point out here, this was not the beginning of this kind of exploration. Hitler and the Nazi Party were also experimenting with such things. Not to get off topic, but the Americans brought hundreds of Nazi scientists, actually I believe it's around 1,600, engineers, technicians, etc., to the States in Operation Paperclip to use their expertise in weaponry for the good of US advancement, aka to defeat the former Soviet Union. That also meant men that had overseen and been compliant to the horrors in the concentration camps. Werner von Braun was an aerospace engineer and space architect, the brains behind the V-2 rocket, and later worked for NASA. I actually met one of his apprentices years ago, a Venezuelan inventor, aeronautics engineer, who later died in mysterious circumstances. My listeners looked impressed. I didn't know you had met people like that or even knew about all this stuff. Effie's praise was well received, I have to say. It's not often that teenagers think their parents are cool. There was a lot neither of them knew about my past, and perhaps it was best it stayed that way. So yeah, the Americans haven't exactly got an untarnished record when it comes to using vile Nazis just to stay ahead of the Russians. So much for ethics and morals. Anyway, back to CERN. I've read some really fucked up stuff, particularly about a Dr. Edward Mantle there, who stated they carried out a secret experiment at a level never before attempted, and the head of the team literally disappeared in a blinding light. Her possessions remained on the chair where she'd been seated, but her being, her body, was gone. Did they open the portal which sucked her in? But more importantly, did they manage to close it again? And if they didn't close it, what the hell did they let through? The added twist and mess to this story is the doctor who recounts what happened is later found dead a couple of years later from apparent suicide. and all his research burnt in the trash, and the rest wiped from the hard drive, except for one thing. He'd been researching some hidden code of something to do with the north and south magnetic poles. It was actually quite strange that I was speaking with such fluidity. Yes, I already knew a lot of this from my own past research and investigation during a period working as a journalist. However, it was as if someone was behind me filling in all the gaps. Xanthius and his team of cosmic soldiers, no doubt. Okay guys, there you have one extract. As I say, the novel is still at the embryonic stage and changes will be made and editing done. But you have a vague idea of where I may be going with this, and I hope you are intrigued and wish to know what happens next. Until the next time, hasta luego.